great honor to have with us John Todd, our good friend, Dr. Tom Berry, who's the pastor of the Bible Baptist Church in Elkton, Maryland, wrote to me about Brother Todd a number of months ago. I believe it was back in, I don't remember just when it was, maybe, I guess close to a year ago, talking about him, sharing some things about him. John is from the family line of Collins that brought witchcraft to Salem, Massachusetts. His occult name was Lance Collins. John was initiated into a witch coven at 14 years of age. Became a high priest then at 18. He joined the military and served in special forces known as the Green Berets. His IQ tested 175. And I could go on and on reading many things about him. But I think the most glorious event in his life, I'm sure he would agree, and I'm thankful this happened. John was saved through the witness of a faithful pastor, Reverend Jack Taylor, the ministries of the Castle Hills Baptist Church in San Antonio, Texas. And I'm so glad that he was saved and brought out of that which he was in. Amen? Amen. We thank the Lord especially for that tonight. It's a great honor and a great joy to introduce to our congregation Brother John Todd. I'm sure what he's going to say tonight will be enlightening, challenging. He's going to speak to all of our hearts. Let's give him a real good open door and Chambersburg welcome, shall we?
One thing I'd like to say before I get started, it never seems to fail that when I'm done, you, my brothers and sisters in the Lord, have fear in their hearts. There's no reason to have fear in your hearts. It seems like every time we talk about the enemy, Christians become afraid rather than stirred up and fighting mad. So I just ask that if you have this fear in your heart when this is over, that you just simply get in your prayer chamber or up front or someplace with the Lord and discuss the matter with him. There is nothing to be afraid of when it comes to the devil. He was defeated 2,000 years ago. That's why I'm here. He was defeated 2,000 years ago. I think the thing that made me the most mad when I got saved was that I served somebody since a child for over 20 years that was defeated 2,000 years ago. And I guess the only reason I served him was I didn't realize who he was till I got saved. It took that enlightenment. Heard Brother Barry preach this morning on the devil blinding God's people's eyes and just the world's eyes. Take it for a fact, he can do it. For 20-some years, I served him as a priest and a high priest, and later as a grand druid, and had many thousands of people serving him under me. And never once did I even realize who I was serving. There were many things that I learned in witchcraft. I'm not going to tell you what they were, but there were many things I learned and many things that I taught. And it's a standard teaching in witchcraft. As you go through apprenticeship or as you go through what we call the outer court, you're told to do things. You don't ask why you do them. If you do ask why you do them, they tell you that you're being naughty, that you shouldn't ask, mainly because they don't know. I never did know why I was doing the things I was doing or why I was teaching the things that I was teaching. They worked, so we did them. After I got saved, it took salvation for me to find out why they worked. And I guess after knowing that, there's no way you can go back to what you came out of. Very quickly tonight, I can't be really quickly, but I'll try. I want to give my testimony, and then I want to turn it over for questions and answers. I've learned the hard way after 5 years. It's normal for me to say the things that I say, but it's astounding for you to listen to them. And I realize when the meeting's over that many things I say are strange to Christians. Most of you grew up in Christian homes, or even if you were in the world, you were not very close to what I was into. So when I say things, to me, they're everyday things. I guess that's why we have such a successful ministry with the people in drugs and the people in the occult, because they've tried to tell Christians for years the things they've been into and the things they've experienced, and they look at them like they're crazy. And I come along and I say, oh, sure, I'll listen to you. I've been there. I know the same things, and I'll sit there and I'll listen, and they find it very outstanding that I believe them because I've experienced them too. So I don't gap at somebody when they tell me they've seen demons or floated things through the air or received answers on Ouija boards or made people do their own will by spells. I was there. I know it's so. But at the same time, I know how weak it is compared to what I have now. I've told witches across the United States. We went to St. Paul when they were going to have their convention this year, which they called off. They're having it right now in Washington, D.C. This is the last night of it. And it was in all the front pages of the newspaper down there. Christians across the United States says, you don't really expect us to believe that witches are that organized. No, they've just got senators and congressmen and top witches down there all in one convention. They're not organized. Not at all. But anyway, we were there, and many witches came up to me and asked me why I would become a Christian. See, witches have the opinion that either Christians are the most evil things that ever lived, or they're the most foolish people that ever lived. They want to know why I would become a Christian. I said, because I'm more powerful now than I was when I was a witch. That's not the reason, but I said it in the words they'd understand it. And they couldn't grasp that. I know how they feel when I was in witchcraft. I never considered Christianity until the night I got saved. I never once considered it was an answer. I never considered that Jesus was an answer, and that the things in the Christian church were foolish at the least and dangerous at the most, and I guess they are dangerous to witchcraft. But to explain what I'm talking about very quickly, I come from a family called the Collinses. Some of them have changed on this side of the Atlantic Ocean from England, have changed their name to Todd back prior to the Civil War. But that doesn't say all Collinses are Todds of this family that I came from. But this family brought witchcraft to the United States. I was in Philadelphia the other night. I don't understand what it's all about, but after I left there, the newspaper decided that their greatest campaign would be against me. And many things I said in my testimony, they said they checked out and weren't so. It's funny, we checked out and they still were so. Like many things that I'll mention tonight, we even went as far as to say that witchcraft started outside of Salem, Massachusetts, and they even named the bay that the witches landed after the head witch, my ancestor, Francis Collins. The newspaper said that place didn't exist. We looked at the map, it was still there. We don't understand quite what they were up to, but I guess they confused enough people to disregard it. We were wondering when people were going to get around to this. But anyway, I come from the Collins family, and just because it was outside of Salem, let me quickly remind you, no witches were executed in Salem. There'll be a book coming out shortly on this from Chick Publications. Except for one prostitute, everybody executed in Salem were Christians. And they were tried and convicted by a jury and by a pastor who was not a pastor. He was a slave trader hired by the Collinses. The church was built by the Collinses, and the jury were all members of the Collinses church. Needless to say, they weren't Christians. They were witches. But we went back there and researched it. But to go on quickly, so I don't confuse you too much, since I've already destroyed your high school history lesson. I have a habit of doing that. I'll destroy more than that before the night's over. But when I was a youngster, I started practicing witchcraft. I really cast my first spell when I was about 8. And I started studying for the priesthood when I was 13. I was asked to join the outer court of the Coven there in Columbus, Ohio, where I grew up. And at 14, I was initiated. I would like to add this before I go on. When the service is over, I'll be glad to talk with any Mason present. And I will compare my initiation to witchcraft word for word, action for action of yours. They are identical without change. And I'll be glad to discuss the matter with you. After that, at 18, I was initiated a high priest. This made me the ruling pastor, more or less. See, in witchcraft, the church is a little different. Only the ministers meet, and they meet once a month. The congregation doesn't even know who's in it. They only go to their particular priest and ask for a favor. They never come together. But at 18, I was made the high priest. That made me draft exempt from the U.S. Army, or from the U.S. military service, because all of the denominations or brotherhoods of witchcraft are federally recognized tax-deductible churches, and therefore their ministers do not have to serve. I received a 4D status, but a lot of us at that time thought it was important to get witchcraft started at the different military bases, so we enlisted anyway. And that was in 68. When I was discharged in 70, there was a coven at every military base in the United States and Europe of all 4 of the branches of service. So it grows very quickly. But I served Vietnam, came back and re-enlisted for 6 years, and I served 30 days in my 6-year term, went to Germany for that time, and up until this time, I thought witchcraft was just like being a Baptist or being a Catholic. It was a religion. I didn't realize there was anything to it except witchcraft. And this is where most witches are at. In fact, at this time I believed in a Godhead system of gods and goddesses, and believed in it very devoutly. I had been raised in it all my life. I believed in psychic powers, and that's all I believed in. So while I was there in Germany one night, after taking some drugs and doing a lot of drinking, I got in a shootout in the middle of downtown Stuttgart with an officer. The officer got killed. Now, the Army has a strict no-no about shooting officers. They don't like it. So they placed me in solitary confinement, and there I am, waiting for Leavenworth, more or less. We'd already offered a plea to the judge that we would plead guilty if he would give me 30 years and call it quits. And he tore it up and laughed at us. So I was pretty sure what was in for me, and I just sat there. And eventually, through a riot that had happened at the stockade just a few days prior, and a man being placed in solitary confinement along with me, and then released from the stockade, I got word out back to the United States by phone the predicament that I was in. I had been in Germany such a little time that I hadn't had a chance to start a coven at Stuttgart, and I had no way of getting the word out. So the man placed a phone call to Los Angeles, collect, to my foster mother, and said the predicament I was in. I told him to tell her to cast a spell on the jury so they'd think I was a real nice person. And that's all I thought they would do. I'd seen spells like this work many times. I've seen them work recently many times in courts. But I was not expecting what took place. About 3 days after the man made the phone call, my cell door opened. And there stood a senator and a U.S. congressman, a couple generals, and an honorable discharge. The honorable discharge gave no reason as to why I was being discharged. I just had an honorable discharge like I'd served all my time. I had all my time and rank and grade, even a top secret security clearance. I was told that my court-martial records had been destroyed and that my military file would be placed with a top secret security clearance so nobody could get into it. That was the end of it. The senator and the congressman left, and I went to Fort Dix and drew the rest of my papers and stuff and headed for Columbus, Ohio, scratching my head the whole time, wondering what type of spell was so good that it had senators and congressmen doing its bidding. I still didn't catch on what was going on. So I arrived in Ohio, and I began asking questions the day I arrived there. And I was told they had been expecting me, and here was an envelope with a one-way first-class ticket to Kennedy Airport, New York City, $2,000 for spending money, and I was to get on the next flight, and they would make a phone call and tell them I was coming. That was fine, except I wanted to know who them were. They said I would find out when I arrived. So I got on the plane, took off, landed at the airport, and sure enough, somebody was waiting to meet me. A person that I had read his books, I had thought was one of the greatest wizards, male witches that had ever lived, and very privileged that I could be staying with him and learning more about witchcraft from him. Now, I gave his name, which I'm going to give in a minute, in Philadelphia last Sunday night. I even gave his job at the time that I was staying with him. Except the newspaper and everybody else said they called the university he was supposed to be working for, and the university denied he'd ever been there. It's funny, I used to sit in his classes in the university. They have a way of covering things up. He has his own college now for witches, but his name is Dr. Raymond Buckland, and at that time he was head of the anthropology department at Columbia University. Although Columbia University likes to say he never existed now. But I learned with him for a while, learned a little more in Maryland, went to California and studied some more. During this process, I began to learn what most witches don't know, and that is that the gods they've been worshiping don't exist, that they're imitated by what we call familiar spirits or spirit guides, demons. Witches don't like to call them demons, they like to call them spirit guides, and that there is only one God, and the God's name was Lucifer. Now, this was a shocking thing to me, since I was raised to believe that the devil did not exist. See, witches aren't Satanists. They don't believe in Satan. And I was quickly explained to that Lucifer was a good God and not an evil God, and that Jesus was the imitator. So I learned many things, both of witchcraft, and I also learned why the senators and the politicians were there. They were there because we were the religion of a political organization called the Illuminati. And I was told all about the Illuminati and its history. I was schooled in the things that it had done and the things that it was going to do and the things that I was going to do. And before I go on, if I can have the lights dimmed here, if the pastor can give me a hand, I want to show a few things that will help explain. Yeah, I don't know if you can take notes in the dark, but if you can, I'm going to be going through it quickly, but you can go ahead. How do I turn this? So I turned it on. I don't think it's going to work, but we'll try anyway. I didn't make these. Brother Barry made them, and I think they have a lot to be desired. I don't know if you can see them or not. I don't think you really can see them, but the first one, this thing you see up here is on the back of your $1 bill, and what it is the seal of the Illuminati. America tells us it's the reverse side of the Great Seal of the United States. The only problem is that the United States has never sealed one document with it, ever, and never intends to. It was in existence before the United States was in existence. And I invite you, if you know your Latin, to look at your dollar bills later, your $1 bills, and down at the bottom you will see some Latin. It says this new order that began 1776. That means not the 4th of July, but May the 1st, 1776. It's the creation day of the Illuminati. It consists of 3 pyramids and a sphinx, which I'll go through very quickly. We have put a few blocks on there. There are hundreds of blocks in each pyramid. This is the organization, political organization. This is the middle pyramid. I'm supposed to put the first one up there, but I can't see them in the dark. This is some of its political and police organizations that they use. And we put up ones that mainly concern the United States. This one I think you can see a little better. On the top of each pyramid, you'll see a capstone with an eye in it. The capstone is the Rothschild family or tribunal that rules the Illuminati. They were the creators of it. The eye is Lucifer, their god, and their voice. At the top block, the first 3 top blocks are on every pyramid. The top block is what I was initiated to, the Council of 13, called the Grand Druid Council. They only take orders from the Rothschilds and nobody else. They're their private priesthood. The Council of 33 is directly under them. That is the 33 highest Masons in the world. The Council of 500 is some of the richest people in the world. There are 500, actually I could honestly say the 500 richest people and conglomerates of the world. It's their real power, as I'll show you in a minute. This is the politics. This is the one. I don't think you can really see much of the writing, but this is the organizations of witchcraft. The Golden Dawn is the 4th block up there. That is the Rothschild's private coven. The Aquarian Arts Festival is the organization that ties all of the occult brotherhoods together. It's in St. Paul. The Wicca Church of America, I was a member of. The Church of All Worlds is located in St. Louis. These are denominations like Northern Baptist, Southern Baptist, Independent Baptist. The National Council of Churches, the Satanic Brotherhood of America, Scientology, Unity is the main platform for witches to be speakers at towards what they consider Christian people. The Church of Wicca is another denomination. It's in Greenfield, North Carolina. Aquarian Anti-Definition League is an organization that was formed by one of the Grand Druids, Isaac Bonowitz, and the American Civil Liberties Union. Its purpose is to pass laws and to sue Christian churches in federal court for defaming witches and the occult. And they have been winning millions of dollars in federal court. Process Church of the Final Judgment is a church that Charles Manson belonged to. I was also a member of it. So they believe in human sacrifice, and they believe that the only answer to Christianity is to bomb the churches and execute the Christians. The Garnerian Brotherhood is the traditional witchcraft in England. Order of the Rose Cross Another word for it is Rosicrucian. They are a human sacrifice order. And the Holy Order of the Garter is another traditional English witchcraft group. I don't know if you can, let me turn that around. I don't know if you can see this, but this is the most important one. This is the power of the Illuminati. Without the Sphinx or the mystery of the Illuminati, it would have no power. This is where all of its power comes from. If you notice, the head of it is the Rothschild family and the Council of 500. Under that, the Rockefeller, DuPonts, Kennedys, Onassis, and other families. Queen Julianne is also on the Council of 500. Over in the center is its heart. The Bank of England, the Bank of France, the Federal Reserve Act. Most people feel the Federal Reserve Act is a government organization. It is not. It has nothing to do with the government of the United States. It is a stockholder-owned company by individuals. Much of the stock is owned by non-Americans, 90% of it. The Chase Manhattan Bank, the Bank of America, and the First National Bank. The World Common Market, Standard Oil, Montgomery Ward, Sears, Federal Department Stores, Safeway Groceries, Fazio's, others. We just put a few blocks up there. Shell Oil. Shell Oil is owned by Queen Julianne and Philip Rothschild. And, of course, Union 76. We tell Christians across, you can turn the lights back on now. Put us in dark here for a minute. Well, that's better. We tell Christians across the United States that you cannot shop any day, any week. Housewives and husbands cannot shop without buying from a company that the Illuminati owns. It is impossible. About 12 years ago, Philip Rothschild ordered, I'll go back to my testimony in a minute, but I want to make this clear. About 12 years ago, Philip Rothschild ordered one of his mistresses to write an 1,100-page book that would describe to all witches how they would take control of the world through the Illuminati. It was called Atlas Shrugged. One of the things in it is happening on the front pages of the newspapers across the United States right now. In fact, it spent a third of the book describing how they would raise the oil prices and then later destroy the oil fields, and then they would also completely shut down the coal. That was written 12 years ago. Also described how they would blow up grain mills, how they would derail trains. Their sole purpose is to bankrupt their own companies and destroy their own companies till they destroy the currency of the whole world and still be so financially strong they would withstand it. Now we go back to my testimony where everybody gets a breath. I know you thought you were going to hear a lot about spell casting and spooky ghosts, but I surprised you. I got something more spooky to tell you. Anyway, as I learned all this, and I was taken up to Colorado Springs, outside of the NORAD Center, about a mile in the same location, and placed through an initiation for this Council of 13. And then I moved to San Antonio, where I lived till I was saved, and ruled a 13-state area that I had from there. When I was saved, I had 5,000 covens, in other words, churches, totaling 65,000 initiated priests and priestesses. That's just the ministers, not the congregation. So it is quite large. This state wasn't one of them. This is run by Mrs. Buckland, but Ohio was one of them, so it's close enough. I lived there until I was saved in Labor Day of 72. And what led to my salvation was this. The Grand Druids meet 8 times a year on the Witches' Sabbaths at various locations in the world. I hosted the last meeting that I attended. It was held in San Antonio at the casino building. A courier from the London Embassy, a member of our State Department, brought a sealed courier pouch so immigration couldn't touch it to the meeting and left it. It had never been opened from the time it had been sealed in the London Embassy. Dr. Buckland cut the seal on it and took out 6 letters that were sealed with this Illuminati crest. The first 4 were just business, money that we were to pay here and there and so on. Actually, the Grand Druid Council is nothing but glorified bankers. They write millions of dollars worth of checks to people in political and religious fields every month. But the last two letters led me to want to get out. I had, as a child, accidentally attended a few Sunday school classes because I had nothing better to do. And during those classes, I heard about the book of Revelations and a few things in it, which was very strange, being back in the early 60s, to hear anything like this. At least in the particular kind of church I was going to, it was kind of liberal. So I had a little background of what the Christians felt was in their Bible. I thought it was foolish, but I had a little background. Now, I always kind of snickered, even though I was part of setting up a world government, I snickered that it was ever going to happen, that we were serious. It was kind of a little game we were playing. As long as the Rothschilds had all the money to spend on our plans, we went ahead and spent the money. So I never took it serious till I opened the last two letters. Now, in the first letter that we opened of those last two was a chart. In that chart, it listed an 8-year step-by-step plan for world takeover, ending in the December month of 1980. Since I have gotten out, I have not seen one thing fail or be delayed on that time chart. I'm not saying that it won't be delayed, but it's going to take a lot of Christians doing a lot of serious praying, which I haven't seen yet. Next, the last letter we opened contained, now I'll have to quote it and then I'll have to explain it, since witches say English, but they say words that may not mean anything to you. It said, "We have found a man who we believe to be the son of Lucifer. We believe that through his works and our backing, he can become the ruler of this world, stop all wars, and bring peace, finally, to this war-stricken world." Now, that literally meant that we had found a person so fantastically powered that he could convince people he was their only salvation. Now, that literally meant, in Christian terms, he was demon-possessed like nobody had ever seen. After reading that, at August the 1st, 72, I decided it was time to look elsewhere to get out. Now, this hadn't been a new idea. Before I was made a Grand Druid, I thought about getting out. And so had a young actress in California that was ordered executed and left hanging with her throat cut by 1 foot, which is one of the tarot cards, to tell all witches that she had betrayed witchcraft and this was her death. And after seeing this and what happened to Sharon Tate, I decided I'd stay in. But now I wanted out. I didn't know how to get out. I didn't consider Christianity at all a way out, but I wanted out. So a month rolled around and I got deeper involved in drugs. In fact, the night I was saved, I weighed 149 pounds because I was doing $150 a day worth of methadone speed, mainlining it, what the street people call crystal. So I was literally in a paranoid mess anyway because of the drug, and all these plans hadn't made me any more restful. So one morning, Saturday afternoon, morning, a Baptist preacher came across me in one of our occult stores. He was there because he had come to realize that witchcraft was real when he had always considered it a fable about witches flying on broomsticks with warts on their nose and pointed hats. The way he had found it was he found his daughter, an initiated priestess of a witchcraft coven. He had caught her casting spells in her bedroom one night. So it became very real to him, and after much prayer and fasting, he decided to track down a few witches and see if he couldn't witness to them. He wasn't getting through to his daughter. He thought he might go to the head of it, and they got saved, his daughter would get saved. So he found me in one of our occult stores called the Spanish Bazaar there in San Antonio, and started to witness to me. He knew who I was because I was going by my witchcraft name Lance, and everybody just about in town had seen me on television, radio, and newspapers about witchcraft. So he started witnessing to me, and I told him in certain profanity that I didn't care for it and I would like him to leave. So when this failed, he decided that he wasn't going to get past the demons that were in me, so he started ordering the demons to be quiet. And then he proceeded to pray for me whether I liked it or not. And the prayer went something like this. I demand that Satan stop giving you his benefits, including drugs. I order that to be so in the name of Jesus. And I command Satan to stop communicating with you supernaturally, and I break your power of witchcraft till you come face to face with the gospel. And then I command your mind to be set free so that you can perceive the gospel and make your own mind up. Now this was necessary in my condition because I didn't have my own mind. And then he left, and I thought he was crazy, so I went upstairs and did some more drugs because I couldn't understand why I was feeling the way I was feeling. And it was not too well at that moment. Well, that night, I didn't have anything to worry about. I did all my drugs up because I was expecting a very large shipment of drugs to come across to Laredo, Mexico. Except something happened that had never happened before. The drugs got busted. The wrong guard that was not on our salary was on the border that night. They even brought the wrong car across. They had the wrong license number, and everything that could have went wrong, and the shipment was busted, and I was without drugs. So when I found out about it, I made a few phone calls around different areas in the United States trying to find some drugs that could get to me very quickly, because most people already used theirs up. We were at the end of it. And I was told I'd have some Tuesday morning. That's a long time to wait for an addict as bad as I was. So about Monday night, Labor Day night, as I was going through withdrawal, extreme proportional withdrawal, I got in my car, started to drive it out of the parking lot, and almost drove it in the river. So I left it there, and I went for a walk. I walked about 4 or 5 blocks, and I came upon a movie theater. Now, it was just an everyday movie theater, still there to this day. Shows just regular pictures. It's not anything to do with the Christian church, so I thought I was pretty safe. Paid my money and went in, sit down about 3 rows back, we'll get right in the movie. It was a movie called The Cross and the Switchblade. That may seem funny to you. It was not funny to me at the time. So I sat there trying to make wisecracks at the movie all night and became interested in Nicky Cruz. So you think with one mind, and I think with the same mind now as a Christian, but as a witch, I thought with a different mind. Dave Wilkerson was the enemy and Nicky Cruz was the hero. So I sat there and I thought, this guy's pretty good, nothing wrong with him. Maybe he'll convert the preacher over here. And then he got saved. Now that term meant nothing to us, but when he changed from the old Nicky Cruz to the new Nicky Cruz, that meant something. That was impossible. The cornerstone or the whole floor of witchcraft, you cannot cast a spell, you cannot mix a potion, you cannot do a rite without a firm knowledge of astrology. It is the base for all practices in witchcraft. And one of its teachings is you are born a set personality. There is nothing you can do to change from that set personality. Mine was pretty grouchy as it was. So as Nicky Cruz changed, this was a miracle not understandable to any witch. So going out of there in a very confused state of mind, as I walked out the door not realizing much of what had happened, even to the point that I forgot I was even going through withdrawal. And I walked out, and a young man walked up to me, handed me this tract, said, here, this is for you, turned around and walked off. Didn't hand anybody else a tract, just left, and the tract was called Bewitched. It was on witchcraft. Now, I was raised in a supernatural world. All our lives, we had spent listening to spirit guides. Now, since that preacher had prayed for me, my spirit guides had not said a word to me. I was in a vacuum, much described like, have you ever went through a trial where you pray and just feel like you're not getting through? Well, this is the way I felt, and nothing was coming through. And I was in a vacuum. And after 14 years of depending upon these spirits to tell me everything to do, nobody was telling me anything, because this preacher had taken authority over them and ordered them to be quiet. And as I was reading this booklet, I had sense enough to know something was trying to get to me, something was trying to get through, but none of my spirit guides would be giving me books on witchcraft that was telling me the devil was behind it. So I threw the book away in a bigger state of confusion than I'd ever been, And I walked back to where my apartment was in a casino building, and it consists of several nightclubs back there. And I walked into one of them, the Club Aquarius, walked to the back of the club and sit down in the office back there by myself and try to think things out. Now, I spent several hours trying to think of a Christian church that I could go to and ask questions of that we didn't own the minister of. Now, that may seem kind of strange to you, but as an ex-Grand Druid, it's not strange at all. Much that you see in churches that you just take as liberalism is payoffism. I'll go over that more simple. They've taken the money and rejected the Lord. It's kind of hard for a minister who's not sold out to God to turn down $500,000 if it's laid down as a bribe. And they can get even higher. In fact, one church I know of got $8 million in 2 years, and another one got $10 million in 1 year. So they can receive the money. Anyway, I didn't have a membership list with me, so I didn't know who we owned and who we didn't, and I was afraid to call the wrong pastor because that could get me killed. So I sat there thinking for a little bit, and I remember that the night before, one of our witches that was a prostitute in the downtown area had come screaming into the nightclub the night before about a coffee house called the Green Gate Club. Strange place. It used to be a burlesque place about 3 months prior to that, and this minister came in and preached an uninvited revival. Now, the revival took about 15 minutes. 20-some people got saved, including the dancers, the bartenders, the band, people in the congregation, and the husband and wife that owned the place. So then, when they got saved, they decided to turn it over to a Baptist church that they were going to, the Baptist church that was praying and fasting for me. Now, don't confuse Jack Taylor with the pastor who came in. He was from another church. He couldn't get his church to pray and fast for witches since his church thought he was crazy when he said witch. So he called up Castle Hills, which was well known for working in the power of God. And they asked for people to pray and fast, and they got about 500 people to pray and fast over that weekend that I'd get saved. And I firmly believe that had a lot to do with it. So she had told me about this place, and she wanted us to burn it down, buy it out, or something, because it was ruining her business. I mean, here's a prostitute proposition a soldier, and here's somebody over here preaching the Word of God to him. It doesn't work. So she was very upset, and I decided I'd go look this place up. So I walked on over by the bus station, went in. It was about 2 in the morning. The place was supposed to close at midnight. Now, I firmly believe to this day that God breaks Coke fountains, because when I came in there, the manager had stayed to fix the Coke fountain that had broke down just as he was ready to close it. And I walked in, and he started witnessing to me, and it was fine for about, 45 minutes of an hour, and then I brought up witchcraft. So, in a white kind of ghostly-like face, he called up the pastor and said, I got this witch down there. He says, well, we've been praying and fasting. He'd get there, go ahead, witness to him. We'll just call everybody up and start praying. So they started praying, and he started witnessing more, started showing me things in the Bible, started praying for me. Pretty soon he was praying, and I was praying, and the Lord was saving. And I've never forgotten it. See, I was born in a witchcraft family where I inherited everything my parents had. In other words, I inherited their demons, or ones just like the ones they had. So I was never free from the time the doctor spanked me on the bottom in the delivery room till that night in 72. And you may have felt great when you got saved, but I don't think you felt as great as I felt when I got saved. We may argue that point, but for the first time, I could think for myself without this heavy, like cotton in my head is about the only way you could describe it. And my decision was that if they killed me going out of that place, then I'd die happy. And I walked out, not really thinking about any danger. The next night I was back and saying, I'd like to live long enough to enjoy this. And the reason for that is that you don't leave witchcraft once you're initiated. You're in, you're in. To prove this point, there have been, since my salvation, about 500 people saved out of witchcraft. That's not very many when you know how many millions are in. 50 of them have been killed in 5 years. Our life is in danger all the time, my wife's and myself, and all the people that have come out. They start at $10,000 bounty and work up to several hundred thousand. But it's not just witches. I have a few contacts still back in the Illuminati that will do me favors every once in a while. They don't understand why I want to be a Christian, but they don't think I'm all that bad. When I had them run a computer check through one of the computers they have in New York that the occult owns to keep tabs on everybody, and I wanted to check out what Christian ministers I might know that had the same problem to them. Brother Barry's name came up. They've got $100,000 on that man's head. Jack Chick of Chick Publications, Dr. Van Eppie, Joe Boyd, Dan Hartree, my pastor Roland Rasmussen, and many others, to go on and on. They have felt such a danger to them that they have decided that they're better dead than alive, and were willing to spend millions of dollars to make sure that it happens. So it is a warfare, and it goes on, and it's getting worse and worse. We had to pray much before we'd come out to the East Coast. Everybody said I was crazy when I moved to LA to minister to the people out there. They don't know the East Coast. It's been an experience. We ask that you pray for us as we go around ministering. My wife is usually with me on the road, but she had to go back to Los Angeles on an emergency. And we ask that you pray for her while she's on the road. And I think what I'll do now is simply open it for your questions, and I hope that I have the answers. If you have a question, just raise your hand. Okay, Pastor, go ahead.
Do Christians wear things that pertain to witchcraft?
This was planned. Let's see if we can do this without turning the lights off. Yeah, we can. Praise the Lord. That's a little bolder than what was up there. I drew those. These are jewelry that was created by demonic instruction to very important people. Christians are astonished when I tell them that the greatest wizard that ever lived, male witch, was Solomon. When he backslid, he really backslid. As great as his writings were in our Bible, they were as great in the witchcraft Bible. The very initiation rites, how to prepare a witchcraft Bible, how to conjure demons up, everything, even how to commit human sacrifice, are writings that he created. Mean things the Christian church has no idea to. Before I tell you what they mean, I want to say this. It was impossible to buy this jewelry, except for the Ankh, outside of a witchcraft store until a few years ago. They were handmade by silversmiths belonging to the priesthood and sold only to initiated witches in occult stores. Since then, the Illuminati has decided that one of the greatest tricks they could play on a Christian was to put this jewelry around their neck and on their hand. The reason is this stuff attracts demons. They cling around where it's at. Now, if you're shocked to see the Star of David up there, that's because it's just recently been called the Star of David. For thousands of years, it was called the hexagram or the crest of Solomon. Now, when a witch wants to practice witchcraft, she'll get in the pentagram. That's the five-pointed star in the circle. That's their strongest form of protection. And then they will lay this six-pointed star, the hexagram, which means to hex or to practice black magic or to put a spell on somebody. They will put it in a circle on the floor, and this will cause the demon to appear at their instruction. It is the most evil sign in witchcraft. I know I may not be getting through to you what I'm trying to get through, but it's dangerous to have it. The pentagram, the pinnacle with the one point up means witchcraft. Up means demon worship or Satanism. This is interesting to note that the Eastern Star symbol is a two points up, five-pointed star. This symbolizes the goat head, which Satanists believe is the representative of the devil, and they use the goat head to worship it like they're worshiping the devil. The Ankh means that you despise virginity, believe in fertility rites, practice fertility rites, and worship the sun god Ra. The sun god Ra is the Egyptian name for Lucifer. The peace symbol up there is not the peace symbol. I didn't have to do the initiation that contained the broken cross because I was born into witchcraft, and that wasn't necessary. And people who have no Christian background do not have to do it. But if a person raised in the Christian church, whether they were Christian or not, wants to join witchcraft, they must take a ceramic cross, turn it upside down, and break the crossbars down, symbolizing their rejection of Calvary and the Christian church. This is said to bring you peace of mind while you practice witchcraft. That's where it got the word peace symbol from. We call it peace symbol in the last 20 years. They've called it the broken cross for several hundred. Now, which are you going to believe? After that, you have what is called the unicorn's horn, or the Italian horn is what they're calling it now, so they can sell it. It means, literally, the translation of it is, you trust the devil for your finance. If you don't trust the devil for your finance, don't wear it. I can guarantee you it has just the opposite reaction in a Christian's life. The last symbol is the symbol that initiated priest and priestess Coven members wear to show they have been initiated. Now, Christians ask me, what's this got to do with the Christian church? You know, we don't have to worry about it. This morning, we put a young man, we cast demons out of a young man who got delivered from this, who had his initiation scar on his wrist, who was a counselor and a member of Word of Life Ministries. Word of Life Christian Club Ministries. They are everywhere, people. The young lady who took my place grew up, was raised, and was a member of Thomas Road Baptist Church, Lynchburg, Virginia, Jerry Falwell's church. Jerry doesn't know it, but that's where she grew up and was raised, and she now sits on that Council of 13. So they are everywhere. Next question. I think there was one. Start to stand up back here before the pastor asked me his.
I have lots of questions over the night. We can answer them all night. I think there's an answer to it. There's a minister in town that pastors one of the largest churches in my understanding that he participates in seances. And I'd like you to comment on that. And also I have a second question, which concerns the Bilderbergers and the Trilateral Commission.
Well, the Bilderbergers are the 500. I didn't know you'd know that term, so I didn't use it.
Yes, I've studied conspiracy for a number of years, and I've been the last year with this. And the Trilateral Commission, I wonder if you might have some comments about that.
I'm sure you couldn't see the pyramid, but it was on the pyramid. The Trilateral Council is the inner council of the CFR, Council of Foreign Relations, which is the American name for the Illuminati. Every member who sits on the CFR or Trilateral Council is an initiated member of the Illuminati. That's what I was trying to say, yes. Yes. They're not there without full knowledge, and they are handpicked by David Rockefeller, the leader of the Illuminati in the United States. Okay? Yeah. I don't know. I wasn't over this state. Let me ask you a question. Is it a United Methodist Church? Well, that's because the United Methodist Church, this is a good guess, has accepted the Omega Brotherhood, organization started in Phoenix by United Methodist members who believe that seances are Christian practice, and it is now accepted in the United Methodist Church. Okay? So he can do that and not be kicked out.
Would you briefly outline the steps remaining in the world takeover plan between now and 1980?
Wow. I don't know if you all heard that. I'll repeat it for everybody's benefit. When I repeat the steps remaining in the world takeover plan, if the pastor has no objection, the reason I ask this is it can be pretty frightening and pretty unbelievable. I like to leave that to the last question so they'll believe everything I said before I say this. They usually reject everything after that because they're sitting around shocked. What remains is they're in the process of a trial and error right now, and they test things. I'll leave that to the last question so they'll believe everything I said before I say this. They usually reject everything after that because because they're sitting around shocked. What remains is they're in the process of a trial and error right now, and they test things. Last year they tested what it would be like to be without fuel to heat your homes. This year they're going to see if they can't starve you, absolutely shut all electricity off in the East Coast. Now, the book ended, Atlas Shrugged, the timetable ended with this. When the lights of New York City go out for the last time, we will have the world. Now, that meant this. They are going towards the end, cut the cities off completely. There'll be a Teamster strike. Nothing will move for months. I mean, nothing will move. It'll be more violent. These strikes will be more violent than the coal miner strike is right now. Coal miners will strike again. They are in a process of destroying all stored food and farmland in the farmer strike so that we will be without any food in the cities or in the countries or anywhere except what is in federal storehouse. They will strike so that no planes, the controllers, air controllers will strike and nothing will fly over the skies of the United States except military flights. The longshoremen will strike and nothing will come off the boats. And the trains engineers will strike and nothing will move. In other words, nothing is going to move at all. Now, if you live in a large city, how are you going to get your food if they don't bring it into you? Everything will be paralyzed. Nothing will move. At the same time, we will be in riot and revolution with the United States. In fact, the whole world will be in it. It seems strange. Christians cannot grasp that a mass murderer like Charles Manson will ever be released from prison. You should have heard the vote when he was up for release a month ago. He was kept there by 2 votes. 2 votes kept him from leaving prison. Now, they didn't want him out, and let me explain something. He did not go there because the jury found him guilty. They could not have sent him to prison if the Illuminati did not want him to go. He went there for a reason, and we have talked with prison officials across the United States and people belonging to motorcycle clubs and so on. We have received the same answer. He has them united. There is a mass army within every prison from coast to coast. They have been promised weapons, military weapons. To verify this, the U.S. Army has said, and so has the Marine Corps, that in the last 5 years, they have lost half of their small arms weapons to theft in the United States. That includes handheld ground-to-air heat-seeking missiles that can take a DC-10 out of the sky at 40,000 feet. Now, one of the largest storehouses is in Baltimore, and the second largest is in Philadelphia for these weapons. So they're very close to you. Now, he has been gathering an army outside of prison. It amounts to over 100,000 professionally trained military people. They've been hiring ex-Green Berets, Rangers, Navy SEALs to train them in camps. One is down in War, West Virginia, to give you an example, to train them in special forces tactics. Every one of them is as trained as a Green Beret is. That is very well trained. Manson will be released either next year or the following year. They haven't decided yet. I'll say this, the one thing that will hold their plan up is if they don't get their gun laws passed. These people refuse to go out and cause havoc if somebody's going to be shooting back at them. So they have been promised that all the guns will be confiscated before they start their move. Now, they have been promised they will get this country. What they don't know is they've been set up. They have been set up just so they will kill a certain amount of people. The figure at the present is that in the first year, 1 million people will be butchered. I use that term because that's about how to describe what will happen. And I can leave it to your imagination and your prayer life as to who's scheduled to be killed. Next, this is just so they can get the National Guard called out. They recently passed a law that gives the President the right to suspend the Constitution and Congress and call martial law and call out the military. Now that would seem too harsh to us right now. Well, what happens when millions of people are getting shot at and killed? Then they'll be calling for it to happen. That's some of the stuff that's coming about. Some of it is legislation that's being passed right now. House Bill 41 went through the House. It's before the Senate now. It gives, if it's passed, it will pull much of the federal tax deduction status of many Christian churches. And the ones that keep it, the people who give to them, their names will be printed with their addresses, their phone numbers, and their work addresses of every giver in every post office in the United States. It's called House Bill 41. This will give those radicals your dwelling address and where you work so they can come look you up. Another one was the Martial Law Act. It's been passed. Another one is the Anti-Hoarding Act. It is the one thing they fear. See, the whole thing is, if you can be independent of federal help, their plan won't work. You must be dependent upon the government for every bite of food, every light bulb in your house, and every warmth that you feel home. You must be dependent upon them. Now, the Anti-Hoarding Act forbids you to store over 1 month's food supply, to store medical supplies or fuel supplies over a month at a time. There's a reason for it, their reason. The last one is called the Genocide Act. Some of you may have heard of it. They defeated it years ago, but now it looks like it's going to get passed before the Senate now. It can put you in federal prison for converting somebody from the faith that they were born into by their parents. In other words, if you convert a Catholic, a Jew, or a witch, and their parents press charges, you can go to federal penitentiary for it. Okay? And it's getting ready to pass now.
Many different ways that to fight communism against the environment has grown so much more. I kind of wondered if you could tell us whether or not witchcraft is directly connected with communism.
Well, you're talking to an ex-Illuminatist who knows that there's no such thing. Anybody coming out of the Illuminati will tell you that the Communist Party is run by Illuminati, not communists. Sometime, and history will show it, sometime back in 1776, Abraham Pike, then the head of the Illuminati, also head of the Masons at the time, said that they needed to create a political party that would frighten the world and keep it fighting each other until they could bring peace to the world. And then Karl Marx showed up. Now, if you go to the British Museum, you can find 2 checks for several £1,000 made out to Karl Marx, signed by Nathan Rothschild. Okay? And I can go into much history about the Communist Party, how Lenin and Trotsky both stayed at the Krupp Mansion in New York, financed by Rockefeller and Krupp and Swift and others, how they took $4 million worth of Jacob Swift gold to finance the revolution, sailed from New York Harbor, where their ship was confiscated by the British government as they tried to run the blockade during World War I, how Woodrow Wilson called and ordered their release so America wouldn't go into the war, and how they were sent on their way. There's much history about it. Yeah.
What does witchcraft have to do with Masons?
Well, other than the 33 highest Masons are on the Council of 33, other than most Masons do not realize that they have taken the same right that makes a person a witch. They have taken the same right to become a Mason, except that we cut our wrist and they don't cut their wrist. That's the only difference. It is exactly the same. I can lay a drawing of our temple down. Your temple's laid out the same. I can describe our witchcraft rites. Yours are exactly the same. We've been doing it for 8,000 years. What's your excuse? Yes. Yeah, I wish that you could have seen on the organizations. Let me read off the organizations real quick. Got a piece of white paper behind it. American Civil Liberties Union, the Scottish Rite. By the way, witchcraft is supposed to be the old religion of Scotland. The York Rite, the JCs, and I want to explain about the Junior Chamber of Commerce. The Illuminati needed a group to send funds to finance the training of the radical groups that would be used later. the Junior Chamber of Commerce, which the group chose to do the funding. The Masonic lodges, both the white and the blue, the Knights of Columbus, the Knights of Felicitas, and the Oddfellows. Now, I want to say something about these lodges. That means its leaders use that organization for their purposes. That does not mean that the members of those organizations know what's going on. Clear back during after our Revolutionary War, you can find this in the Adams Chronicles. John Adams wrote George Washington, asking him to beware of Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton and their misuse of the Masonic lodges, which Washington was a member of, because he was using it, and this is a direct quote, he was using it for Illuminati purposes and the worship of Lucifer. Now, I have in my car photostatic copies of books handed only to chosen ones in the 32nd. That means just the ones they've hand-picked out of the 32nd level and the 33rd level, describing the initiation of the 33rd level Mason, also describing of what they thought of Jesus. Believe me, it's not polite. And who the true God is. They consider Jesus to be an impersonator. And who the true God is, and the true God is Lucifer. And that's in black and white out of Masonic books. I've got him in my car. If I get into a debate after the service, I can go get him and let you read him out of your own books. Next question.
Well, hey, I had a deck of tarot cards. And
Tarot cards.
I never got them. They were the James Bond, right after James Bond came out.
Yeah.
But the cards, I got rid of them because I started feeling I was getting answers to some of the events that were taking place.
Oh, I'm sure.
And it was scary.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the tarot cards and the...
You got your answers from demons.
Yeah, that's scary after the hearing.
If you had read the 18th chapter of Deuteronomy, you wouldn't have did it. You could have been stoned to death in the Old Testament for it.
But is it... Does it set up... Are the cards set up a certain way? Does that mean something the way the cards are set up, something like that?
Every drawing means something, okay? And the demons control how they fall and use them. But they can only be 90% accurate. Nothing in witchcraft is ever 100% accurate. Okay? Yes.
Somebody tried for for a second, like asthma or doctor's disease, cut yourself, they do something, and like take this doctor's leave, or my daughter had before that day that stuck her mouth, and from a fridge to her mouth, and that's what she said was
Witchcraft. Witchcraft. It's called sorcery. Yes.
What are the Illuminati plans for the nation of Israel?
They will use Israel to gain control of the world. All nations except the United States will go after Israel just before they take over the world, cause World War III. And Jimmy Carter with the United States government will step in and save Israel. Now right now, Carter is losing popularity. Don't let that deceive you. Give him a year. He'll be a god to many people. Okay? That's all I can tell you right now. If I told you everything, I'd lose you. Okay? Just hang in there. I said what I said tonight 5 years ago when people were ready to lynch me. Now they're listening to me because they can see it in the newspaper. Okay? Back here. Pray. I'll tell you this. The only thing the Illuminati fears, as I said, is an independent person who can live, eat, sleep, stay warm, and defend themselves separate from federal help. Okay? That's all. Give us more time. It's short. Right now, I pray. Yeah. Give us more time. See, they've tried twice before. They've never been this organized. Okay? They've tried twice before in 200 years to rule the world and came very close. Once during Napoleon and once during World War I. They came extremely close to gaining the world both times. Now, let's pray that the Lord messes up their plans one more time. I haven't seen it happen yet, but I'd like to see it happen. Yeah. Colvin? Down where? I'm not familiar with the town. I don't know. I wasn't over Pennsylvania. So I don't know. If you were invited to a Colvin down there, there's one down there. Yeah. They don't invite you to Coburn's unless there was one down there. Now, I've got a question for you. Have you been playing with the Ouija board at seances? Well, I can only tell you they wouldn't have invited you down there unless you had been doing something of the occult. Okay? And I'll let it go at that. Yes. I'll repeat that one. Is rock music an outgrowth of witchcraft? You can't practice witchcraft without it. Now, when I was in there, I was president of the largest booking agency. They've had to change their name since then because of the publicity I've been given it. But at the time, they were called Zodiac Productions. I knew most of the rock groups in the United States. I still do. That's why we live in L.A. Some of my closest friends are like David Crosby from Crosby, Still, Nash & Young, and Graham Nash and others that are around there. And I still talk to many of them. They all are members. Most of the rock groups are members of a witchcraft church. That doesn't mean they've been initiated. That means that's their religion. And when they do a song, they'll ask the witch covens or the temple to cast a spell over that song so that it will become a hit and sell. Now, what takes place when a witch casts a spell is they order a lot of demons to do things. They don't know that's what they do, but that's in essence what happens. Now, that means when you go buy an album and you take it home with you, it's like buying a box of Cracker Jacks. You get a free surprise. It's called a demon. It goes along with the record. Okay? Now, much of the music is written in witch language by witches. Elton John has made the statement he has never wrote a song or sung a song that was not written in witch language. Example, Beyond the Yellow Brick Road is 100% in witch language. That's why many songs you don't understand. That's why many people who listen to them don't understand. Until they get high on drugs, and then all of a sudden the meanings start coming to them. Many songs that have been written in witch language was the whole album by Carole King called Tapestry. The Book of Prophecy to Witches is the double white album that the Beatles produced, containing the song Helter Skelter. Every song in it is prophecy. The Horse with No Name, One Tin Soldier. I could list thousands of songs that were written this way. They definitely have demonic influence behind them. Parents, I want to say this to you. Have you noticed the increase of rebellion in teenagers in the home? The reason is it's your fault. You let them listen to it. It stirs up rebellion. It's not the words in the song, it's the music. Witches know it. They hit certain chords on purpose. As many people that have once been in hypnosis, like Dr. Berry when he was younger was involved in hypnosis, can tell you the music is hypnotic. It stirs up a warlike nature in the young people. Now, they're going to boo me when this is over, but it's still the truth anyway. Now, if you want to have them stay the way they are, and you want to baby them, because you're afraid they might get mad at you, or run away from home or something, you go ahead and let them keep on playing it. They're going to do it anyway. Or you go home and you break the records and you burn the covers. Now, when witches get saved, nobody tells them to get out of rock music. When they hand their witchcraft items over to be burnt, you notice I said burnt, not thrown in the trash can, it's scriptural, they hand their records over too. Because they've lived in a world of the supernatural and they know the supernatural tied in with music. Now, the most perfect description of Lucifer that ever existed and is in the 28th chapter of Ezekiel on the king of Tyre. It describes Lucifer being created with musical instruments embedded in his body. It's true. As a person who's seen him, it's true. He thinks he's a god, and therefore he must have music because gods must have music. So you can go ahead, let his music be played in your home if you choose, or you can become a stronger Christian and get rid of it. You're the parents. The parents are the ones. Your kids are not going to answer for it. You're the head of the house. You're going to answer for it. No, it'll become an effect. It's strange that they wouldn't have got it passed without Christians' help. See, witchcraft never sacrifices anything that they don't gain 10,000 miles. And when they lost the battle on purpose in court with the Moonies, that set the stage for the Genocide Act. While we were yelling, yeah, get them out of those false cults and rehabilitate them, okay, we were setting the stage for our own downfall. You don't give up freedom to a certain group without losing it yourself. And they've always set us up this way. And I'm always surprised at how easy Christians fall into it. Yes? How do I feel about them? Did you see that pyramid? You couldn't see it back there, could you? I'm against any organization whose leaders are 33rd level Masons. And their leader is a 33rd level Mason. Now, he's taken off his Masonic ring in the last 3 years, but he's still a 33rd level Mason. You cannot hit the Illuminati and be part of it. That's why they call that Illuminati knows that people are going to find out about them. People found out about them without my help. Brother Barry knew about them before I came along. And so when you find out about them, the best thing they can do is call your attention towards something else and say, that's that. So they have reflected the attention on Zionism and said that is where it's at. The only problem is that most of the people in the Illuminati aren't Jews. Their founders were Jews by birth, but not by religion. But most of its leaders, separate from the Rothschilds, are Gaelic, Scotch or French Gaelic. Got nothing to do with Jews. My family and most of the people that served with me on the Grand Druid, their family trees go back to the pagan temples in Rome and Greece and England, to the original priesthoods. Some go back clear to Egypt and Babylon. Got nothing to do with the Jews. So I don't like them. I don't like anybody that's a hate group, for one thing, and I've heard too much hate doctrine about the Birch Society. See, I'm not choosy about who I get. I mean, yeah.
The person who has that in witchcraft was very and they were saying used to be the better person before Father and I see him and they were one used to go over
Okay, did everybody understand what he was saying? Okay. A person who's been in the occult and been saved, are they more troubled by demons than a person who has never been there? Yes, if they haven't been through deliverance. But at the same time, they're a bigger weapon against the devil. You can't trick a witch with false doctrines. They've heard them all. You can't pass off a phony Christian on a witch. And you can't pass a witch off on them as a Christian. They've been there. They know what to spot. That's why I look at a person's eyes when I talk to them. If that person has demonic influence in their life, I want to know it. I want to know who I'm talking to and who I'm not talking to. And when you've lived in the supernatural world and you've dealt with demons like witches have, it's no different when you spot them in a person who's professing to be a Christian and who isn't living the life. So they are a stronger weapon against the devil because they've served him. See, as close as we are to Jesus now, as loving and as passionate and the relationship we are with him now, that's how we felt about the devil, whether we knew he was the devil or not. And so when you're that close to something, you know about it. Now, if you backslide, you still know about Christianity. So a backslidden saved witch knows about witchcraft. It's the same thing. But they do have problems, and needless to say, the devil doesn't like us, so we're hit a little harder than maybe somebody else might be. But at the same time, we grow faster and stronger because of it. Yeah. Oh, I didn't realize that was in there. Yes, we are starting a retreat. As I told you, many people have been killed but have come out of it. It's gotten so that witches aren't trusting to come out of it now. Very few are coming out because of the fear. And there is no place for them to go. I mean, when you ask a Christian, will you let this witch come into your home so they have a place to stay? And then all of a sudden you visualize people throwing grenades through your window and shooting up your house, you change your mind. Because that was probably what will happen. So we have decided to build a retreat in wilderness country somewhere on the West Coast. I'm not going to say where. And an armed retreat where these people will be safe till they grow, and then they can either leave the retreat or they can stay. And it will serve a double purpose I don't want to go into later for Christians, but right now that's its purpose, and we're believing that it will get built. We need $50,000, and in a month and a half since we have been trying to raise the money, my pastor's received $25. So, see, it's kind of hard to convince Christians a place like this is needed when they can go home to their safe house every night, not realizing that for a witch to become saved, for a witch to leave witchcraft, their life is in extreme danger and probably will be killed. And it's easy to feel safe when you're safe. I guess that's why I feel it, because I'm in danger all the time, so I know how they feel. And I've had many a close friend killed that have become Christians and then killed. So we are trying to build such a retreat.
Person be under the influence of something like this, a demon, and especially a Christian not knowing it?
I really don't think. Yeah, I guess you can because of traditional teaching. I have to look at it from your point of view. A woman that was a Christian was at Brother Barry's church this morning, and we put her through deliverance. In other words, we cast the demons out of her. She was not possessed. A Christian cannot be possessed. I want to make that clear. But she had demonic spirits, influences. She had tried to take her life. She would go into fits of depression where her prayer life could not conquer them. She had in 18 months felt the joy, I guess, that she felt this morning after it was over. When you can no longer crucify the flesh and it goes beyond just crucifying the flesh, then it's time to cast out the demons.
This is done through prayer.
That's how it's done. It's done through the blood and through the name of Jesus. I don't pray. I just tell the devil to get out. Actually, it's very well done. If you have the faith, you can do it to yourself if you need it. Actually, the other ones are doing it anyway. We have them say a prayer of rejection, then we just take authority over it, but they could do the same thing if they believed it. Yes?
You said about Saul's man for his feet, not to make sure. Actually, the man text that really did murder Sharon Tate was supposed to be out there this week. He is born again, working. He released from prison.
You said he was out here, what?
I saw him, the fellow that killed Sharon Tate.
Text, yeah. Yeah.
He is born again.
That's what he says, yes.
And he's in prison now.
Yes.
Will he be released and his people with him?
Well, you got to understand something. If Tex was a born-again Christian, he would tell all. Nobody, there's been several people supposed to be born again of that group. They have not told anything. If they were born again, they'd be telling all. They're not. That's why I don't believe it. You can believe it if you choose, but I don't. Because I know Manson, a buddy of mine. I know what went on, and it wasn't a mass killing, it was a contract killing. Even the police who tried them knew that, but they didn't want to press it in the trial because they didn't think they could get a conviction if they pressed the conspiracy theory behind it. I've talked with the police officers behind it. No, I don't believe it. If Tex was born again and he was in prison, they'd be trying to kill him for one thing. Manson runs the prison. Nothing goes down in there that he doesn't give the orders to. And that's from the very security guards that work there. So I don't accept it. I'm sorry. I came out of that world, and I realized, let me give you this. They recently asked Anita Bryan whether Jimmy Carter was a Christian, for instance. I'll just use this example. I loved what her answer was. Christians are so gullible. I really appreciate Anita for this. She said, you're not a Christian because you say you're born again. You're a Christian if you have the fruit of the Spirit. Does he? That's the whole question. If the fruit's there, they're a Christian. If it's not there, you can only grow thorns and not apples. Okay? That's all I can tell you. Yes? Okay, you're talking about Jesus rock, is what you're talking about. I mentioned the church earlier that we spent $8 million in 2 years to build. It's called Calvary Chapel. It's Pastor Chuck Smith. It's in Costa Mesa, California. The organization that he created is called Maranatha Productions. They started Jesus rock music. The reason for the $8 million was to put rock music in churches that did not allow rock music. It's not what's sung on the tune, it's the music. I'm going to answer one more question, but 2 more questions here. I'm going to turn it over to the pastor. Yeah. Can a person being a member of a fundamental church actually be a witch and not a Christian? Absolutely. They've spent millions of dollars putting plants in fundamental churches around the United States. They train them in Christian beliefs. The newest form of blasphemy by a witch towards the Christian God is to sit there and praise the Lord and act like a Christian, laughing the whole time. Okay? Absolutely. That's what Legina, the girl that took my place, her main thrust was to keep an eye on Jerry Falwell's church while she was witch queen in Virginia. And then she was so good at it, they made her a grand druid when I resigned. So there's a lot of it. In fact, the church that reached me had 4 high priestesses attending the church and had it in a mess until they started finding out what it was all about, took a hand and corrected the matter. They've tried recently to get witchcraft, and mainly the Ouija board and seances in many Christian high schools, because 95% of the people inducted into witchcraft in the last couple of years were inducted by their junior high and high school teachers in the public school system, by teachers that were scholarship and funded and put through college that were Coven members just so they could spread witchcraft. And so we, through many liberal practices in the school, have been using Christian schools. So now they're trying to get in the Christian schools. Okay? Back here.
Yes, is Liberty Lobby a part of a problem that organization?
What?
Liberty Lobby.
I don't know. I don't keep tab on that, okay? The only thing I know about politics is what was happening when I got in. And I try to stay away from politics. I was very political-minded when I was a witch. I try to stay very Christian-minded, and you can't do both. I'll take this one, and then I'm going to close. Yes.
What you do is they we or they, which is context of witchcraft.
Mm-hmm.
They about demons looking around witchcraft, reading words and cards and such. Why do you carry your books?
My books?
Not from a Sonic Temple.
Oh, those books aren't the same books. The 2 books that I had, and I don't have any with me tonight, one is written by Charles Finney, who was saved out of the Masons. And another one was the first man executed by the Illuminati for betraying them, Captain Morgan. And this is the reason I carry those 2 books, because they expose. But I don't believe that a Christian can have books written by witches in their libraries and get away with it. And I don't own any. I burn all mine when I get saved. Okay? Pastor.
Let's pray together in prayer, shall we? Eyes bowed and eyes closed, no one moving around now, no one meeting. We've heard tonight from a man who's been in it and yet knows. And I thank God for being